Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ben Lamorte. He's got a global team that trains and coaches managers and leaders on how to make measurable progress with objectives and key results, OKRs. And so one of the things as we do as strategic planning facilitators, we work with teams and we want them to be able to use things like OKRs so they can have measurable progress. Sometimes it doesn't go how we want because there's a resistance to setting goals and measurable targets. But I'm sure Ben knows a lot about that, almost more than I do. Ben, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yes. Thanks, Anthony, for having me. I hope I know more than you do about this whole goals thing. I've been doing this for 15 years. It's almost like the biggest career I've ever had. So I'm hoping I know something about it.
Well, what I think is so cool is that, from looking at the work that you do, you've got a global team of folks that are training and developing in this. And I think it speaks to just the need and the desire to be able to have this in organizations. So, from this longest career that you've ever had, established in 2014, you got a cool background before that, what are you seeing as teams explore getting training on OKRs? Why do they want it? Why do they need it? And we'll start there.
Yeah, I think it's because OKRs is like a business acronym, right? And you kind of need only maybe a half an hour to 45 minutes of general theoretical training. And you're pretty much like, I get it, right? And the problem, though, is in practically doing it, right? So once you start trying to do this OKRs thing, you just start making all the classic mistakes that you make with any kind of new thing, right? Instead of doing OKRs, you're making a to-do list, right? That's the big problem we see. And here's the sad thing, right? A lot of the trainings out there are actually reinforcing this behavior of the objective is, what I want to do. And then the key results are how I'm going to do it. So I think this is the big problem that we're seeing because OKRs is becoming more mainstream, like we were just talking about. If we were doing this 3 years ago, I would have to start this off with, let me tell you about OKRs, what it is and all that. Now, most of the senior managers out there are either have used, or at the very least are familiar with OKRs, and they've probably had an experience where they did it wrong. So the idea is like, oh, I'll just go do some training, and then somehow that will help me do it right. And at the end of the day, I'm sort of saying, it might, but probably not, because what really helps you do it right is to just do it, okay? But to have sort of an external or even an internal person, but somebody else coaching you along the way, asking you these tough questions to help you to refine things instead of making a to-do list so that they actually look like really measurable key results.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so interesting. There's I don't want to say it's like golf where there's you think you're doing it and you're actually doing it, because there's what OKRs are designed to be is what is the outcome and then how do you measure it fundamentally. And again, you might say, actually, Anthony, that's wrong. And then we'll have a whole other conversation about that. But then there's the folks that likely come in saying, this is how I've always done it. And then the work that you do is not just the training, that 45 minutes, but it's the change management, the process, and the continual evolution of one's own ability to set OKRs well, because there's ranges to what is actually a good OKR, a great OKR, the kind of art and science of it. So can you speak to the nuance between kind of doing it and doing it really well and what it looks like once it's been reinforced and practiced over time?
Yeah, like here's when you're not doing it really well. And look, I don't want to blame people if you're doing it like this. Probably this is how you're doing it because it's the traditional goal setting mindset applied to OKRs. And that's where I just was working with a client where this happened. The company has this objective and they might have some key results and they're pretty good, right? They're things like whatever they are, reduce this metric from X to Y or something. That's a good key result that's super measurable. And everybody would agree it's a great thing for us to hit. But then you look around and everybody copy and paste that key result and sort of says, now that's my key result, or that key result becomes my objective. Oh, I'll take key result 3.2. And the other department will take key result 2.4 or whatever, like the second objective with the fourth key result of the company becomes my objective. So they're trying to do this kind of cascaded hierarchy where I'm sort of draft picking, if you will, which key result from the company should become my team's objective. Unfortunately, this is the copy and paste mindset. And so you're not actually thinking for yourself about what do we really want to achieve. And what I'm finding is more and more, a lot of the teams don't find this to be useful. It's almost like, well, I'm choosing this because they told me to. I want to make this look good in the PowerPoint presentation when my boss presents it to their boss. But then when we look at the actual key results, we're like, well, that's not really controllable by us. There's not really much we can do. So it's frustrating. And what we really need to do is tell them more, hey, what is our OKR? Sure, we can have top level OKRs, but as a senior manager, you're probably working more at the team level. So what you need to do is say, that's great. I know about the top level OKRs. And that's so cool that we have those, because then it translates my strategy into some measurable things that's relatively near term. That's a great thing. I don't want to take anything away from that. But what you need to do as a senior manager is say, okay, let's try to see how can I create an objective that drives us toward those higher level key results? What can my team do? How can it be mostly controllable by my team? And now it becomes much more engaging for your team. Here's the secret though. When you write your objective at your senior manager team level, don't just go right to the key results. Start with the objective and bullet point out two things, right? Number one, why is this objective so important right now? Now, hopefully you can say, well, it's important because it allows us to achieve these super critical key results at a higher level or something like that. Then you're going to talk about why is it so important now? So it's going to, look, there's a lot of things we could be working on, but this particular focus for us is so important right now because, and that's where you create a sense of urgency. That's where you motivate the team. Now, here's the fine print. Sometimes your OKR at your team level may actually not directly connect to the higher level OKRs, and that's okay. I want to keep, this is important, Anthony, this one. That's why I'm kind of going off on this. But the thing is, this is not a balanced scorecard kind of, here are the buckets of things that we're trying to do at the company level. By definition, OKRs are a subset, a focused area for the company to improve. We're not going to get all of our work into the OKRs for the company. And so what that means is your team, I've seen this happen before, especially like platform teams, security teams, more the infrastructure team. You're going to look at that company level OKR. It might have nothing to do at all with what your priority is at your team level. And I'm trying to tell you that's okay, so long as in your objective, you're able to articulate why that objective is so important right now. And you then have key results, because when you have that escalation conversation with the leadership team at the top level, you're going to start with, here's our objective and here's why we think it's important, even though it may not connect, quote, in a nice little diagram to those higher level goals.
No, I think that's key. And what's just so interesting, and it's like you're talking to two strategy nerds here, or listening to two strategy nerds. Forgive me for lumping you in with me and my nerddom. But in this, 7 or 8 minutes we've been chatting, like talking about this nuance, this is the things that teams, I wish they thought about it, but they don't. They don't actually talk about it. They will either like go off to their hole and disagree or just do it their own way. And so first of all, like the nuance of why now, the specific language, so critical. And like, how does it relate to the team? The way I talk about it when we talk about it rather, is we look at like offense, defense, and special teams with football. They all have the same kind of goal at the top, vision. They want to win the game, but you don't measure the offense's success the same way you would measure the defense's success. They're very different, but they're towards a different outcome. So like that measurement is key. And again, I'm trying not to mince the language. One of the questions I have later for you is the nuance of language, because you have OKRs, you have SMART goals, you have balanced scorecard. Many of it is overlapping. I want to talk about that later. But before I do, I want to ask you about compliance culture. Like I'm actually going to do this because it is going to help my team and it's how I'm going to measure success, distinct from, well, I'm doing this because I have to and somebody told me to and I'm just going to do that. How do you see the balance between the using OKRs as a tool versus doing it because they have to?
Yeah, this is a really important point, which is that OKRs do not work with compliance work for the most part, okay? So a lot of compliance work is something like, hey, we're going through the audit, so we need to have these reports done by this date and we have to fill out all these things or whatever, right? Basically, jump through all these hoops and get all this stuff done by this date. Look, if we already know that, right? And I've seen people try to do this. They're saying, well, it's really important that we do all this compliance work. We already know what it is. And then they try to build OKRs around that. This is one of the most like fundamental mistakes you can make, because now it's like you're doing two systems to do the same work. OKRs will generally not add value here. Now, the fine print is, even if you're in an organization like legal or wherever, where you're just getting all this compliance work done, you should still then say, okay, that's great. Keep the lights on, compliance stuff we got to get done, like you said, plan defense.
Can I actually just interrupt just because I think it'd be helpful? When I mean compliance, I mean like just like making your boss happy versus using it as a really valuable tool, not necessarily in the field of compliance, like just copy pasting because that was the way that it was intended to be.
Yeah, let's talk about that. This might be a story that would resonate. I was working with a legal team that had IT. So think of a company that's full of lawyers, but this is not the lawyers. These are the tech guys that are like doing all the infrastructure stuff. They had a CIO and three, or CTO and three directors, let's say, that reported to them. I met with each of those three directors who had been there for like 20 years. We said, you're going to talk to the CTO and you're going to present your focused area of improvement, your OKR. Each of them had an objective. They said, here's why it's important. They had the measurable key results. That was it. It was like one PowerPoint slide, right? Then they had a whole bunch of stuff they needed to get done, all these different projects. Some of that was going to tie toward those OKRs, some of them not. When they went in for their one-on-one with their leader, none of this was copied and pasted. This was, look, I believe this is the important objective for our group within IT. Here's why. Here's how we're going to measure it. I got a call back. By the way, I didn't understand any of this stuff because I'm not an IT guy, tech guy, but I kind of was trying to make it measurable and challenge them as an external coach. I got a call back from the CTO who I had only met like briefly. And he said, Ben, I've worked with these guys for 20 years and I just had the most productive one-on-one I've ever had. They're finally talking to me the way I want to be talked to. So if you're a senior manager, you're going to have some leadership people up there that are going to want you to talk to them, right? But I would say, highly recommend that you do that in an OKR model, right? When you talk to them. So even if you're not formally doing OKRs, you can still talk to them in this way. So rather than saying, oh my God, there's all this stuff we need to do, you're giving me this big, massive list of projects. That's cool. Park that for a minute. Think more big picture and talk to them in that OKR framework.
I think that's it's fascinating. I live it. I see it. And the difference between good managers, good leaders, they speak in the world of performance in terms of outcomes. Like, what are you going to get done? Not, a 10-minute story of all the things you're doing that's going to keep you busy. You actually want to get the ball across the line, so to speak, versus doing a bunch of work. The challenging part is when you have CEOs or senior leaders that don't speak in objectives or key results-based language. And then people are, it's like two ships passing in the night. They have no way of aligning. So it sounds like by embracing this OKR language within an organization, and to formalize it, it helps different levels of team leaders kind of get on the same page, speak the same language, and make sure that they're all doing the right work to move forward. Is that fair to say?
I'd say so. And I'll give you a marketing example, which is something that we can all relate to, even if you're not in marketing. And it was like, because it happened to me. Look, if I give an update to the senior leadership team, not like my boss, let's say I'm the VP of marketing or some pretty big guy. If I start saying, we're doing blogs, we got webinars, we're fixing the landing pages. I mean, at some point, these people are like, why the hell are you talking to me about this? I really don't care. But if you say, oh, we're trying to improve our marketing experience for new customers to drive leads cost effectively. Okay, here's why that's important. Okay, that sounds good. Here are the key results. We need to increase leads from 100 to 400. We need to, whatever. I give you like 3 or 4 of these measurable statements. Then I tell you, this blog has led to 60 leads. Okay, ooh, now I'm interested in the blog, right? So that's the point I'm making there is start with the end in mind, communicate big picture, right? Here's the destination. And then you can give me little updates of all the different things you're working on. But one of the mistakes we make is we start just spewing out all the stuff we're working on. And I got some bad news for you. If you haven't figured it out already, the leadership team doesn't care. They just don't care.
No, absolutely. And I love that you use the word destination because for us, when we do strategic planning, we don't look at just creating a strategic plan or a vision statement or whatever. We say, what is the one destination? Like, where are we going? And then how do we back that up? One of the things that, again, it's kind of new language. It's like, what is the measurable statement? Where's the number in what you're talking about? Because otherwise we're just doing busy work or we're not sure about how far we're going to go. So I want to ask, why, in your experience, do people resist setting goals? Why do they resist setting key results within the work that they do? Do you find
it's human nature? Like, I was in marketing, and this is the one I'll give you. It's like, I had to write blogs. That was kind of like, my boss was guilty of this. He said, you need to write 10 blogs. So I'm like, oh my God, I made a list. I'm going to come up with blog titles. I've got guest blogs. I've got imagery. I'm going to work. I'm writing all these blogs. If somebody asked me why I'm writing blogs, because my boss told me to. That's not a good answer anymore. If you want to get promoted, you got to know, ultimately, if your boss says, we're going to write 10 blogs, okay, great. Would you like 10 good blogs or 10 bad blogs? I mean, obviously good blogs, but how do we know they're good? What is the intended outcome of these blogs? So a good boss should say, I want you to give me 100 demo signups. You can do blogs. You could do a YouTube video. Honestly, I don't care. Give me 100 demo signups from people that have email addresses that are like work emails, who are from companies above $10 million, or, qualify that a little bit. And now you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to write blogs, but I'm not going to just write a bunch. I'm going to try to write a blog that has a stick call to action that really gets people engaged, that gets that target market to fill out this form, which gets them into the demo. Now that's going to inform how I write these blogs and how many blogs I write. Who cares? The point is, give me those 100 new people to sign up for the demo. That's what you need to do, is take that outcome result oriented culture and then free the person up to figure out how in the world do they want to achieve that.
Awesome. I love that. And then hopefully if listeners, you're like me, you had one of those like glass shattering things, because I'm already measuring results in some of the work that I do. And just listening to Ben's example, I'm like, oh, I should like update it. And so, as we kind of wind down here, can you speak to the iterative nature of OKRs and the fact that you might not get it right the first time?
Yeah, so many times that happens. We had a client where they tried to get more partners. They were selling insurance, so they wanted their partners to sell more insurance. And they ended up getting a lot more partners. Like they doubled their number of partners by the end of the quarter, whatever their key result was. But it was a complete failure. See, the partners paid $1,000 up front, so they just assumed that these partners would actually sell the insurance. What they found was it was like none of their partners, like 2 of the 100 partners. So 2% sold any insurance. So what they had to do was pivot. And the good thing about OKRs is the cycle's so short. So even though we failed, that's fine. What did we learn? How do we set up a new key result? Guess what? Don't give me more partners. Give me better quality partners. Okay, but wait a minute. What is a quality partner? Then they had to ask the right question. Ultimately, they figured out through looking at some data, guess what? The good partners are the ones that sell 3 insurance plans in the first month. If they do that, they're off to the races. So then they were able to say, all right, let's get, from 5 to 10 quality partners that sell. Okay, that's a whole different ball game, right? As opposed to just going out and getting all these partners. So as long as you have that quick iteration and learning, a lot of times with OKRs, you'll end up pivoting. And that example, I use it as an example because so many times we measure quantity instead of quality. And I bet you can look at what you're doing and think about, wait a minute, are we just measuring like that number of blogs posted thing? What we really want is leads. I don't care how many blogs we post. I just want leads. So how are we going to do that? That's the key result you want.
What is the best practice cycle within OKRs?
Well, it's either going to be 3, 4, or 6 months, typically, depending on the nature of your business. I kind of like 4 months, only because there's only 3 cycles a year. And look, what we found was 1 cycle a year is no good. Nobody's doing OKRs once a year. 2 cycles might be, it's definitely better than 1. It might work. 3 cycles, we find mostly gives you incremental improvement. Here's what's funny. Going from 3 cycles to 4 cycles in a year very rarely seems to be useful. And yet that's the default approach as defined as the quote standard approach, just because it happens to be quartered. So if you're not sure what to do, I would say actually just go with 4 months if I had to pick one.
I like that. Well, right now we do quarterly strategy reviews where we look at all of those pieces. But again, you risk if you do it too much, you kind of get into the motion and you're not actually practically looking at what it is. And another reason for why we say don't laminate your strategic plan, because then it's like set it and forget it. It is an iterative process as you get better. So your first goal is likely not your best one, but it really has to have that mindset of continuous.
I really do like that. A quarterly review, it's either 3 or 4 months seems to be the sweet spot. It probably doesn't matter too much which one you do, but I don't see there much of an advantage to go less than 3 months. And I don't know why you'd want to go much more than 4 months. Okay, but again, it depends on your business. But you should make an intentional decision there, right? As opposed to just being like, oh, well, it's quarterly because that's what it said.
Because that's what it says. I love it. Ben, how can people connect with you? How can they learn more about your work? And my understanding is you've got people all over the world. So how can they tap in?
Yeah, just go to OKRs.com, right? www.okrs.com. And special bonus, we just put up a new page called the training page. I think you can see it there. And that gets you some actual preview of some of our training that we used to charge for. But I don't know if you've heard, but the economy is not doing so good. So we're saying, you know what? Let's just make everything free. Why are we charging people for things? There's some pretty good resources on our site here now for free.
Awesome. Folks, check it out, OKRs.com. one of the things is the nuance between learning how to do it, being coached how to do it, and having the support ongoingly. Anybody can like read a book about it. There's no shortage of them, but it's really like having somebody support you along the way in that iterative journey. The key thing is your team needs to be willing to do it and to move forward with that work. So connect with Ben, learn more about the work he does. He's got tons of videos, tons of free resources. So Ben, thanks for the time today. It was super fun. Like I said, strategy nerds, but really love it. And I hope everybody got something out of today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Folks, this has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My name is Anthony Taylor. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this. Share it with your team. If you're going through this, goal setting, target setting, OKR setting, there is a way to do it right. There's a way to do it wrong, and it's sometimes hard to tell the difference. So I encourage you to go deep into this journey to help you and your organization be more in that performance mind. If you're getting together to look at your strategic plan, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to facilitate it and support you in those challenging conversations. So once again, my name's Anthony Taylor. Thank you again, Ben, for being my guest today. Appreciate you listening, and I'll see you next time.